Hi, I'm Emily from Chasing Simple, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my best tips for styling shelves. So I know this can really freak people out and they really feel like they don't know exactly what to do with shelves, but it's really more of a science than it is an art, honestly. There's a little bit of a formula for it, and I want to free you from searching the shelves of HomeGoods and Hobby Lobby and places like that in order to find all of your shelf knickknacks. You probably have 80% of what you need to style shelves already in your house, even if you're fairly minimal. So join me today. I want to show you how to use a lot of things that you have to create meaningful shelf vignettes. So I purchased this entertainment center off of Facebook Marketplace last summer, and then I spent the bulk of the summer painting it white. It was like a purple color, and it's a nice quality piece of furniture. It's from Ethan Allen, and I loved it. I could see the potential. I wanted built-ins on this wall, and what I got instead was a $300 piece of furniture instead of spending probably $8,000 on built-ins, I would imagine, for this wall. This wall is about 10 feet long to the door, and so this is a nice hardy piece. I have about an inch before the door. And then I was tasked with styling this, and I had a lot of time as I painted all of this to figure out how I would style it. And I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna need to get so many knickknacks, and I hate knickknacks. And why did I do this? You know, I love the look of shelves behind glass. I just think it looks so collected, but I was really kind of worried about it. And so I took to my memory bin in our basement just to see, is there anything in here that I would enjoy styling up? So let me show you what I did. Let me just give you a quick peek at what the contents of these shelves looks like, so you can kind of get a sense of what all I put on them, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail as I style it up. Okay, so my first tip is to create zigzags with the decor. And what I mean by that is that you want to put kind of your largest pieces in first, and the pieces that have the most presence, and do them kind of in diagonals. So at the top, I have that picture. I go to a diagonal here, and I have another dark frame. And then down here, my dark element is that little shingle. And then also I've created another diagonal or zigzags with this kind of sculptural bowl, the rattan piece, and then repeating that element in this jar. And so, and then also I've created like a diagonal just going straight across. So I've got the architectural element here, an architectural element here, and a sculptural bowl that kind of creates a nice diagonal. And so by kind of filling out those initial pieces, you're gonna find that it really shows off your decor nicely. And then also it just helps to create a lot of balance without creating symmetry within the space. And you'll see that balance in other areas too. Like for example, I have a little book here, and then I have another stack of books down here. And so that creates balance without it being the same throughout. And then once you've got that established, then you can add in all of these other little items like the tassels or the little hanky, you know, the sea urchin that's sitting on the shelf. So all of those elements can kind of create nice vignettes, but you want to start with your big pieces. So go ahead and kind of create some diagonals as a starting point. Before we get too far in this video, would you take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more content like this? Having contrast against the back of your built-ins is really kind of nice to do. So if needed, you could always paint the back of them a different color if the items that you have are more monochromatic with the coloring of your piece. But just by having some things that kind of feel different than that, and you don't have to do that across the board. Like this is a white frame on a white built-in, but the picture itself creates quite a bit of contrast. And so it just will kind of depend, but I think that that's important to consider so that you do have the elements pop. With most built-ins, you're going to want to store some items that are just there for storage. They're not really there for looks. And so you want to figure out ways that you can do that in a beautiful way. And my husband likes physical books and bookshelves and that sort of thing. And so this is kind of a nice compromise for us because it allows books of all looks, like these are all just paperback kind of junky books, to live in a basket. And then he can easily, when he wants to access these, you just turn the basket around and you can easily see all of the titles. And so it's not impractical at all. It's just a nice way to kind of beautify something that is really pretty basic. Like, who wants paperback books, right? So of course, in addition to that, then I've used some books that are more attractive. Like, this is a book set that my husband has of some Winston Churchill books, and they are all very pretty. And if my palette was more pastel, then they would look great sitting out the other way. But because it's not, then I've just chosen to put them in a basket. And the book that I do have out mirrors the color of this haystack rock print that I have below. And so it just kind of brings out that green element a little bit. And then of course I've also done prettier books. So I love like home books and coffee table books and that kind of thing. And I do look at them sometimes, but I like to just set them out and kind of use them as risers. And speaking of risers, I mean, you certainly need them, and you can do that in a number of different ways. So I love to use architectural elements, which you can get at antique stores and that sort of thing. This piece, I think, though, is from Hobby Lobby, and it is just supposed to look like the top of a column, but in fact, it is not. But pieces like that are great because then you can kind of use them as a little riser for your vignette, because that piece would really be kind of too small and get lost if it wasn't on something on the shelf. And you can also use books as a riser, and I think that one is fairly common. I've done that here as well. And you know, you could use pretty books, and then you can also use some books that aren't that pretty, and you can just kind of get creative about how you do it. So I love, you know, books that have white covers in my built-ins. I think that looks really nice, and then also neutral covers. But some of these are just like normal books, you know, they're not really anything that exciting. And this book especially is definitely just a normal book. I just turned it so that the pages are backwards, and you know, that's not something you're going to want to do for a book that you're going to want to reference all the time, but it had really cool pages, and so that's what I did. Now then you can see I have a vintage book there, and I have another stack of vintage books here, and I do kind of look for vintage books when I'm out, not really at antique stores because I think they're so expensive. They're like $20 plus at antique stores, but at thrift stores, you know, just look behind the jackets of books and see what color the jackets are. And if they're a color that you like, then you could definitely incorporate something like that on your built-ins, which I love to do. And I've also used this little vintage suitcase, which is actually like a shelf. But I have used this little vintage suitcase to use as a riser as well. So a lot of things would work. You could use a cake pedestal or something like that, or sometimes even the pieces that you have, like this little footed bowl has a great sense of, you know, just giving it a little bit of elevation. If that were just in a regular bowl, you know, you might not even be able to see the contents, which is like sand from one of our travels and some shells. In this particular set of built-ins, I don't have any lidded baskets, but that's a great way to conceal things that you want and like, but that you don't want to have out as decor, because you do have a real life to live, and a lot of times your built-ins do need to serve an actual purpose. And so I think it's a good idea, you know, you can use hidden books, like where you open it up and it has a space to keep things. You can use lidded baskets, you can use vases and actually put items inside of the vases. You know, whatever you need to do to conceal based on the amount of storage that you need, as long as you kind of let your family know where these concealed items are, it could be a great solution. So as I mentioned, I did kind of take to my memory box and just looked for like sentimental things in my house and thought, how could I capture that in this cabinet? And one of the things that this cabinet kind of became was a little bit of like a memory capsule, you know, a scrapbook of some sort of my husband and I's life together. And so it's kind of sweet, you know, it's in our bedroom. And so it's kind of nice to look at some of these things. And so like, for example, this is the first wedding that we attended together when we were dating. And this is a holiday party that we went to when we were dating. And so these are just like sweet little pictures that, you know, are years old and would just be kind of lost. I think they'd just not even be framed. We have a picture of our son there. We have a couple of pets that have died over the years, and so we have the little paw prints that get made when they die. This is a sweet little lighthouse ornament that we picked up when we were in Canada this summer for our 10th anniversary. That's an engagement photo. We write letters to each other and little notes, and over the years I have just kind of kept those, and we both kind of think those are sweet and sentimental. So they're just tied with butcher's twine, and there for us to, you know, never read again, but think are sweet. And over on this side, you know, I have our wedding photo. I have like a little gift tag that I had written to my husband years ago, just pinned to that tassel. These are like sea buoy kind of things. Just from traveling, you know, I love to go antiquing when we travel, and I will sometimes ship things back to our house because I don't have room for it necessarily in my suitcase, but I do want to bring it with me. And so this little urchin is from the beach and from one of our trips. And then that silhouette is of our son. And then down here, I have a picture of Haystack Rock, which is in Oregon, and a little weathered shingle, which is just very quintessentially Oregon, you know? And then this ball is actually something that was my husband's grandmother's, that she found it on a beach in Oregon. And so it was just really fun to incorporate all of those pieces together. And they just make up a nice story of our life. Oh, I forgot to show you. This is the hanky that was wrapped around the bouquet I had in our wedding. And so, well, you can sort of see it in this picture. And so it's just kind of sweet. You know, that's the sort of thing that I would keep in a box forevermore and then would not have any memory of keeping. So once you've shopped your house and your memory bins and that kind of thing to look for items that you have, then you can kind of fill in with items that are from box stores, or also my favorite place to find things like this is antique stores. And I'll just show you, you know, a few things as I was walking around a couple of antique stores the other day that I think would be great for built-ins, or shelf styling in general. And some of these things you know, you can sort of trade out seasonally. Like you may not want to have coral out during the winter, but coral makes a beautiful piece on your shelves, at least during the warmer months of the year, you know, and so you can kind of tuck things away and bring things out. But there's a lot of things to look for. So as framed art and photos. So if you find things that you like as you're looking through memory bins and that kind of thing, then you can kind of frame them. They don't necessarily have to match, but you want there to be a relationship. So, you know, at the top of each of my built-ins, I have a dark frame, and then at the bottom, I have a light frame. And so that creates some nice balance as you look at both of them together. I think cloches are wonderful. And so that is like a glass dome that goes over something, and it makes like a really small item feel like it has the right amount of presence and just sort of makes it look special. So I think cloches are a great thing to have. Definitely check out antique stores. I think there's so many architectural elements at antique stores, and just things that you can use as risers and to create interest. Like these bookshelves would not be nearly as interesting if they were all just a bunch of stuff that I could link from Target. So just keep that in mind, you know, keep your eye out. And really, almost none of this stuff did I buy for these bookshelves. Like I bought, I think, just the little 2 green fern looking plants. I think that's, oh, and the little baskets. Those are the only 4 items that I purchased when I did these bookshelves. Everything else I already had. And so you don't really need to buy a bunch of stuff. You can just kind of fill in. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that you got some great tips for styling your own shelves. And the biggest thing I can tell you is just go ahead and start with things that you have and then see what you have to fill in from there. You probably have most of what you need already in your house.